Andy drops in with no real transition to speak of. Again, oh, we're going to talk about some of that today. Just a little bit. I will try not to waffle too much because this is a shorter show now, and I can only ramble so much before I waste all of my allotted time. Uh, so welcome to 2024. If you've not seen me before, which is unlikely probably. Wow, already talking down to myself. Perfect, perfect start to the year. Yeah, welcome to 2024. This is the stream. If you've not seen Art Ramble or seen me before, sleep. Or at least that's what I go by on here. And today's stream, the Art Ramble, is just a little bit of talking, a lot of bit of talking, and I'll try and do some art, or I'll try and work on some stuff, or sometimes I'll just kind of whiteboard out ideas. It's a little bit of a place to like talk about various things related to the arts, not just drawing or painting, or like visual arts, but some of the other stuff too, like writing and game design and things like that that are all kind of things that I'm interested in and I want to do more of and continue to expand into and learn more about myself, but also share the things that I learn with everyone else because art and its various forms should be nothing if not inclusive and inviting. It shouldn't be a closed door that people have to knock on with a secret password. My personal opinion is that it should always be something that is open and encouraging and inviting because it can be such a good part of your life in one way or another, whether you choose to do art professionally or just as a hobby. I feel like as a means of expression is incredibly useful. A lot of our day to day lives are not really designed for that, especially when you're working in a lot of places that have a lot of social restrictions and things like that on expression. Even when things are going poorly, you can't really get that stuff out. And I am a big believer in catharsis and getting some of that stuff out of you, either through art or expression in one form or another, whether it be music or drawing or writing. Any number of those things are a good outlet that I feel like is more accessible than a lot of other things. And ultimately, it can cost you as much as you're willing to uh, invest in it, whether it be as little as a piece of paper and a pen that you already had, or if you really get into it, you can get all sorts of things that make that art come a little bit easier or allow you to make types of art that you couldn't before. So, in regards to tonight's stream, wow, huge ass mission statement right off the bat. That nothing if not consistent uh in that wow. Yeah, I have not worded yet today, can you tell? Nothing if not consistent in that particular mindset. But for tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about last year. Not a lot of wrap up, maybe there. Um, what I want to get into, and probably a bit of general thoughts about New Year's and resolutions, and kind of like new beginnings and starting points, and like how we can use those for good or ill depending on what uh why we're kind of setting those markers. And we'll see how in depth that discussion becomes because I have not fully mapped out discussion points. So I will start. Let's get over to the art side real quick. See what we got going on over here. So, the stream was a little bit late because I decided to paint this. I am a fan of the meme, but I did not want to just pull up a meme template and take the original person's artwork and kind of slap it down. So yeah, I just repainted it. I wish I could remember who the original artist was that got into this meme, but I'll have to go find it at some point here and give credit where it's due because it's been an excellent format and also it's a nice piece of art. It's got a lot of layer to it, but also a lot of simplicity and like a looseness in the brush and design that I think I struggle with a little bit sometimes. And I have definitely not recreated it perfectly here, but that was not the point. I was trying to pay proper homage to the format and the original artist, and hopefully I've not missed the mark too far. Also, by the way, still love this painting process, and I don't know why I still haven't done it more. I keep slipping back to line art when I'm trying to do projects, and I feel like for like fast concepting and especially like trying to rough out an atmosphere and such, I should really be doing more of this like shape carving and then painting in, because you can get a lot more precision, um, and kind of build up form in a more traditional painterly fashion than I'm used to. And maybe that's one of the resolutions I need to check off on the board is uh, figuring out my workflow, which seems to be different every single time I sit down to draw or paint. Um, but yeah, I just sat down to do this. I want to say at like 7, like 15 till maybe. So I gave it like a good 45 minutes. Um, from nothing to that. So, if nothing else, it was a really nice warm up to like study and recreate something that I admire rather than trying to just scratch build something from nothing. When my mind and my art hand is kind of cold. I did not do a lot of drawing and painting over the sort of inadvertent winter break I took when it came to like Christmas and that holiday week. I just ended up taking that off, kind of laying low and just letting my mind rest for a while. But coming back now, like it's first of the year, um, and I want to try and do more with it. I'm always perhaps a little over ambitious and under delivering, which is something to work on. Um, but it's very funny to me. Sometimes I look back and I remember or I know that I have already kind of mapped out and like understood what it is that I want to do. And then for some reason I lose it. I lose it in the stack of ideas, the cluster of thoughts. It's mentally sometimes I am not very organized. Because my brain loves to run off and go on tangents, especially artistically and creatively. Sometimes in the middle of something that, needs a lot of dedicated time and energy to finish. And, figuring out why that happens and how that happens is, something that's going to be an ongoing process until I'm old and gray, probably. But something that I do find interesting about resolutions and this is like more general thing and I talked to a friend about this a day or two ago is I remember an earlier time in my life where I was kind of nihilistic about and cynical about people making resolutions and over time I slowly lost that uh in myself and started to notice it when it happened for others. Um, you've all seen stuff out there like people posting videos mocking other people as they try and do something they've not done before and fall short, or they're not some preconceived notion of someone who should be doing something like that. um the sort of, again, gatekeeping sort of behavior that I don't fully understand, um and don't feel like is necessary or helpful for anybody, including the people who are doing it. uh but yeah, over time I've noticed that there are definitely people out there who will decide to look at someone who is trying and, you know, on their way to success, but the road is long. And that can happen with art or anything that you're working on, whether it's, the most common thing I think is a lot of people talk about, the gyms and stuff fill up in January as everyone tries to make a new effort to become healthy. And I think there's a couple reasons. There's something I read, like a decade ago, it feels like, about the psychology of setting these sort of arbitrary start and stop points, and sometimes it's procrastinations. Like, okay, I'll start that on Monday, and that gives you more time before you start the thing that you know will be challenging or difficult or not feel good, but is for a purpose that you know that you need to take care of. It's that form of procrastination. And then I think sometimes there's also positive elements to it where you have a definitive marker from which you are starting, and setting a date or time or whatever that you're starting that thing, allows you to kind of measure your own progress better. Because if you run the timeline too far back, there's lots of ups and downs. Almost nobody is hyper consistent with things that they are trying to improve on or become better at, or just change about themselves. And when you run the timeline too far back, you start seeing all those highs and lows. You start thinking about all the things that you've done wrong in the past, in regards to that. And you can end up coming up with a profoundly negative overall view because the negative stuff stands out. You're less likely to remember those times where you did it just right enough or well, than you are the times where you were really embarrassed by how you did something, or where you were in, the worst shape of your life, where you had drawn something that was just truly just looked like crap to you, whether it truly was or not. And there is definitely um, difficulty in that. Like, you can't look at the entire span of your life and measure that about what you're against what you're about to do. Because throughout your life, you are different versions of yourself. And yeah, you're different versions of yourself throughout. Um, and that can change as rapidly as one day, one week, one month. Your progress might have acceleration and deceleration. If you're trying to create artwork, you might get stuck on an idea for a while and not be able to figure out how to do it or figure out how to learn the skill that you're missing. And then once you get that, suddenly your progress will be rapid for a while. There's an ebb and flow to all of it. And I feel like sometimes setting those markers allows us to put all of those past failures away, taking with us only the lessons that we really need, in order to, improve and do something different. Um, yeah, I guess that's the general statement I had about that. Um, so if you are someone who is deciding to make New Year's resolutions and things like that, try not to weigh too heavily the people who like snark at, anyone trying to do self improvement. Yeah, yeah. Fundamentals are 100% something that I feel like you have to revisit. Um, And a lot of the times we forget that learning is not a one and done process. You have to practice it, you have to further understand it, and even people who have been doing art for a decade or 40 plus years can learn something new just by having a new perspective or finally having something click that they didn't realize they were missing. I guess it's just important to be open to that learning process and continuing to set some new goals and such for yourself. Yeah, learning. You are 100% correct on that, Enma. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. You can learn stuff wrong, and sometimes it takes a little time to unlearn that. That's why I think like fundamental elements and stuff like that can be helpful because if you understand the concept, the mechanics of execution become a little bit simpler. Um, at least for me, and that might be a spurious thing. A lot of people thrive from step by step instruction and things like that. If I understand the concepts more, I can understand what steps I need to take even without being told what steps are. So it's about, the understanding the fundamental parts of it so that the fundamental processes suddenly make sense and you're not fighting against memorization or learning things incorrectly because you've gone through and taken some time and understood, like some concepts um, that allow you to create your own view of art and creation of uh, different sort of things like writing or whatever it is that you happen to be working in or doing. Um, yeah, it all kind of yeah, it can be challenging, and I've talked before about art instruction is kind of rough because I think in places like YouTube and Twitch and stuff sometimes there's a lot of people who have figured things out, but they're not very good at teaching or breaking down those concepts for others. You can have a world class surgeon, but they may be very bad at teaching other people to perform surgery. Um, and that does tend to happen a lot. Yeah, teaching is an entirely separate skill, and I will say that over and over again until everybody hears me because man, it seems like some people do not register that just because you're good at something doesn't mean that your skills can easily be translated from your lips to someone else's ears. I think sometimes I'm a little bit better at teaching or sharing concepts. I prefer the idea of sharing because teaching implies a level of mastery that I do not have. But like sharing insights makes more sense to me sometimes, and it's probably above and beyond what my actual art skills and such are. But um, that's the kind of the point of a lot of stuff that I want to do here and elsewhere is that I'm not just like going out ahead and saying, "Hey, I've mastered this. Now follow my footsteps" or whatever. That doesn't make any sense to me. Um, Sharing information amongst communities of people and then having them bring their own insights back so that we can all learn and grow together. That makes more sense to me. Yeah, yeah. Learning is as much a separate skill sometimes I think as teaching, and I don't think we're very good at showing people. Uh, at least in the culture that I've grown up with in the U.S. Uh, showing people how to learn uh, just about anything. Because if you do that, it doesn't matter what you're trying to tackle. Um, you can kind of you know pick something else up regardless of the instruction and be more likely to be able to comprehend and to a degree teach yourself. Yeah. Uh, it's tough. It's challenging. It's a rough place out there, and I don't know. I've been thinking about that more. Like, I think I started out making all of this art and this channel, and things like that because I wanted to make my art projects and tell stories and trying to work towards a few different things. And I actually have something that I started work on like it feels like a year ago now, and it was one of those messy illustrations that I never quite finished. That kind of like showed the chaos of what was going on in my head, and I thought it would be fun to bring that back up because I haven't touched it in a long time, but it still speaks to like a lot of things that I kind of want to do, and like the challenges of trying to make those things real. Um, but yeah, moving moving on from the meme, which I'm kind of proud of for only being like a 45-minute painting, but uh, we'll go back to something that I drew and inked and started like you know uh coloring adding some color to like almost a year ago I think, and it's very chaotic, it's very dense. So I might fill in some stuff as we're going here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It's a messy chaotic thing. uh where's my project thing here? There we go. But yeah, it's a big chaotic mess, and I'm gonna try and paint in some stuff because I think it can be fun to do that. And it's one of those things that I can do while I'm talking. Sometimes the design portion, like mapping out and creating a new composition, does not work well when I'm monologuing. So this is one of those things that maybe I can actually execute while while talking. Add a little bit of art. But yeah, one of the things that I think I was very much inspired by was or continued to be inspired by, and I would love to get into. But it's like one of the more challenging, like all of the things together kind of work. Um, is like I was very much inspired by movies. Uh, I just like them as a medium because they are so complete. You can show not only the artwork but the motion and to a degree even the emotion of what it is that you're trying to do. Oh, hey, I did a little bit of that already. Okay. I think I was getting a little bit annoyed with some of the stuff that I had done, and that's why I decided to mess with it a little bit. There we go. But one step at a time. Yeah. And I talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago in the art ramble, like the linkage between all of these things kind of being part of one another and like learning the different skills, in a way giving me opportunities to uh kind of do a little bit of everything. Um in a way that, I'm ultimately pleased with because all of these things kind of work together to a degree. There's a little bit of everything in some of the more complex fields, but like the basic building blocks start like with things like art and writing, because if you're trying to create a visual version of a story, that's what you're using. You're using art and writing, and I've done both a little bit off and on even since I was a little kid. Um, I drew a lot. I did a lot of artwork, but trying to get those things to become part of a greater whole is a bit of a challenge sometimes. Trying to make sure that those things come together well. A little bit about each one. Um, Going into it, and but yeah, art and writing are some of the bigger ones for sure. And this is where I'm trying to figure out where to even start because it's a little bit of a cluster up here in the left hand corner. I don't know if you notice it's a big hot mess, and I'm trying to bring it all over to something in the end. But let's go down to let's give it gray, and I do have some like fill in tools and stuff like that to make the coloring processes easier. Otherwise, I will sit here and literally color it in like a coloring book for hours. Sometimes you just gotta make it a little bit simpler, or you will go crazy. Um, but one of the things that I noticed was, yeah, figuring out the process, and that's something that I think I've been trying to figure out for the last year. Is what is the process? What is my workflow? Not just what workflow works best for most scenarios, but what works best for me when it comes to creating an illustration or a painting. Like what are the certain, like, if I understand the fundamentals well enough to kind of get started, how do I make it flow quickly enough that it doesn't become a difficult issue to complete a project? Oop, ad break coming in a couple minutes. I'll try and make sure I pause what I'm talking about. If you've not been here before, I'm not too worried about ad breaks. You can stick around, you can mute it, you can bail. Affiliate's relatively new on the channel, but I will try to stop whenever the ad breaks come in. Should only be like one or two for this stream, like every 30 minutes or so. Um, and it's up to you if you want to hang around and see them. I'm not holding you to that. It's just the cost of affiliate, unfortunately. But yeah, figuring out how to turn all of these impulses, all of these pieces into a creative whole, and uh, it feels like something I've talked a lot about on the Art Ramble because I feel like inertia, uh, fear of like how something is going to turn out and things like that is one of the biggest problems that a lot of artists struggle with. And may ultimately stop them from creating something that they really care about because they don't they don't know how to get past the fear. And I think a lot of the time the impulse is that the fear has to go away, but it's pretty much a case of having to be afraid and do it anyway. Something I've not always been very good at either. Oh, there we go. Welcome back, hopefully. Oh, there it is. Never mind. I messed up my ad break timing. Shit. So I completely misread the timer and thought the ad break had already started when it was actually just the last minute and 30 seconds before the ad break. Can you tell I haven't had these around for very long? Oh man. Okay. It's so dumb sometimes. I actually fought with the idea of just skipping affiliate for a long time and not doing the process because I did not want people to be screwed over by like ads constantly interrupting the stream. But if I wanted to get subs or anything or get the emotes and stuff that I wanted, I had to kind of take that. And while I don't always like it, especially that I have no say in what ads get played, uh, there is a cost of doing business, I guess, that I need to take into account. But yeah. So it's kind of funny looking back at this thing. Looking back at this, because I had all these thoughts and ideas long before I decided to do any of this. I planned and thought about all of these things for years before like taking the plunge to try and do any of them. And trying to do all of them at once is apparently what I decided to do. And much like finishing this, coloring this composition, it's kind of an overwhelming prospect to, take on these different challenges, even if every one of them is kind of fun for me to learn. Just the sheer, like, chaos of all of it, has kind of been, occasionally discouraging, especially when, you're fighting that imposter syndrome element in your head. It seems like it's always trying to tell you, well, whatever you create, it's probably not going to be as good as somebody else's, and once I got past that part, I found it wasn't going to be good enough in general. I stopped comparing myself to other artists and projects directly as much as I could, and just started thinking in terms of like what I could do and what I wanted to do, and that helped. Um, but next boss in the wave, I guess, was me looking at what I did and judging it independently as being not good enough or not interesting enough or too big or complicated for me to start, which if you never start you never know. Right. And yeah, that's definitely one of the early stages. I think everybody compares themselves to others at the start, and then like the next healthy stage, at least I hope it's the next healthy stage, is to compare things to yourself so that you have an understanding that you are not setting an unfair precedent, trying to measure up to someone else's, decades or, you know, whatever of experience. Hmm. Drawing from life is a tough one. I think because, you're trying to recreate something and you don't want it to feel like it fails to hold up to the reality. But honestly, one of the things I talk about a lot on here is one of the things that helped me, or is still in progress. I'm trying to continually apply this thought, is not to compete with reality, not to create something photoreal, but to create a feeling or impression. Um, and I think that extends to like portraits and stuff as well. Is you want to capture the thing that you think of most, and doing it with as few lines as possible, and trying to stop yourself before you get too far, before whatever you're creating starts to break, before you start overworking uh, your composition. And it's hard to stop uh, because you can see all the details that you would almost never be able to actually render um, in real life, and it naturally bothers you as part of the art progression struggle. And you would think, like with you know all this sage advice I'm chucking around, that I've figured all these things out, but I still struggle with a lot of them, and I have to consistently remind myself of what it is I'm trying to capture so that I don't waste my time trying to compete with a photograph or compete with um real life, because real life isn't like 4K 8K, it's 60 million K resolution. It's there's motion, there's lighting, there's microscopic details that our brains and minds and eyes can take in that we can't recreate on the page. So it's best to think of it as something different. Um, uh, and capturing it as simply as you can, and then working up to the point where you don't dip into that uncanny valley. People and faces are the hardest with that, because we're hardwired to pay so much attention to faces that the more detailed they get, the less human it looks. So like I feel like I beat this particular point to death a lot, but it, go look at like some of the masterful Renaissance painters and stuff. You'll see like with pictures of faces, like if you look at it closely enough, if you look at the portraits and stuff, it's a lot simpler than you think. The number of strokes that are used might be a handful of paint strokes in some cases. You will literally have uh background characters that are, for lack of a better term, uh blotches. They're practically ink blots, and maybe that's a good comparison that I haven't thought about. Is ink blots is as a kind of example of what you should be thinking about trying to create when it comes to art, because an ink blot relies on the mind to fill in the gaps, and I think a lot of good art does the same, and it allows you to reduce the amount of effort that it takes to create something, um, but also has an ultimately better results. was something I spent a little bit of time trying to learn about recently was, creating kind of effortless feeling art. And part of the component of that was just quite literally less effort, not trying as hard, because artwork can be very easily overworked. You can add lines and details to try and capture something that's better captured with nothing. Um, the blank spaces in between that sometimes we try and fill in because we know the details are there. But ultimately, like if we zoom out, like those details disappear. Um, and it's really hard to stop yourself from overworking things, from beating that horse until it's a fine paste. Uh, it it really is a challenge, and I'm sure I've done plenty of that in my time. There's definitely a lot of stuff that I've overworked, and like learning to get something up to like a decent point and just stop is one of the hardest things I have had to try and learn, because it just doesn't feel natural sometimes to call something done. But yeah, I think some of that is confidence, which I've been trying to work on in the past year, and I feel like I've made some progress on. Building the confidence to put the pen down when it's done, and also not take it personally if you look at it a day later and it's not as good as you thought or that you felt it was. And being able to revisit that and just do it again and not taking it as a failure. Because one of the things that I talk about a lot and I try and remind myself on a regular basis is that uh, when it comes to something you can just try again, there's no reason for there ever to be a failure state. There's no reason for you to look at something and say to yourself, "Well, I've failed at this. I'm never going to do it again." Unless you want that failure to be enshrined in your mind forever. Unless you want to go back and find yourself thinking about like how you didn't try. Um, it feels kind of important to try again. And that doesn't mean necessarily beating your head against the wall. Like, I think when it comes to learning, one of the best things you can do is make sure you're taking your time to actually learn instead of just trying again the same way. Um, I think that's a pitfall that a lot of us can kind of get into relatively easily, is the sort of, well, I just didn't do it well enough, I'm going to try again, but not looking at like what didn't work, like what part fell short, you know? Because if you don't look at that part, if you don't try and make a change, you're just repeating what you viewed to be a mistake in the first place instead of actively learning anything. And sometimes it's hard to be self critical without feeling like you're beating up on yourself, especially when it comes to art, because art is so personal. It feels like a little bit more like it's something that is part of you versus something you can look at objectively, and that's hard. Some of that helps though is just volume. Just create more art. Yeah, create more art and look at it objectively, and not put so much weight on every single drawing to be perfect, to be the prime example, and instead look at it as every drawing is an opportunity to learn something new that you can apply to the next drawing, or you can even go back and redraw that thing that you thought was so cool in the first place and you just didn't quite get done. Like, I'm coming back to revisit this infographic looking sort of thing about my mind and process and all the things I want to create. I'm revisiting this like a year after I originally inked it because I was overwhelmed by the process of finishing it and what it meant. Um, like all of these challenges that I'm kind of painting in here are real things that one day I am going to have to either do or you know call it quits and give up on. And that's kind of a scary thing to think about. But that is that I would say there's not necessary failure, there's giving up. And that doesn't feel like much better. Um Especially when it hurts so much, when something you've felt a lot of things for, when something is personal like artwork, especially when it's for other people that you really want them to like it. Um I have trouble with that as well. I let that intimidate me sometimes, and it's kept me from like sharing things that people have that that I've, that I know people would probably enjoy. Excuse me. I haven't talked much over the last day or so. It's been quiet, and so I'm burning my voice out real quick here. I need to drink more water and take it easy a little bit, but you know, we've only got like this is like halftime for this stream. So we got a little ways to go. I got to make sure I don't roast my voice right away. Um so yeah, I've let, like my fears or anxieties about whether or not someone is going to like something, actively stop me from doing it. And ultimately, if I never give them the thing, there's not a chance for them to like it. If I never create, you know, a comic or a piece of art or you know, self-publish some writing or something like that, I've chosen to fail or to give up before I even start, because the prospect that people might not like it is too scary. But in other aspects of life, I've learned that a lot of the time, what other people think or feel about something that you're doing is not terribly important. Um, I mean, we're kind of programmed and socialized to, want desperately to fit in with everyone, and or in some cases, push directly against what everyone wants and thinks, and be, rebel against that mold, depending on how strong the pressure is. But one of the things that I find fascinating about that is how long it takes us to um, figure out who we are as people as a result of things like that. You could spend a lot of your life trying to fit in, but not thinking about who you are or what you want, just what everyone else is expecting of you. And I think some of that goes into art as well. Like, we develop these thoughts and expectations of what people think art is, and sometimes they're accurate to what people think or say, but other times we're just making up our own flaming hoops to jump through. We're manufacturing other people's distaste for something that we're doing because we're afraid that that's a possible outcome, and so we give up before we start, and ultimately prove ourselves correct. And that is, without a doubt, no fun. uh, and every time we prove ourselves correct, quote unquote, with something that is just not true, um, we feel vindicated and we feel like, oh, okay, so yeah, it was actually as crappy as I thought it was going to be. Um, I don't need to. to try ever again, because there's no point in trying if I know that the outcome is going to be XYZ. I'm going to do something scary and stupid, and I'm going to merge all these color layers because why not? Um, that's something that I like about digital art now, that a year ago when I did this, I was not thinking about too much, is that you can undo it. You can paint it back the other direction. You can push and pull colors. You can erase. You can start over if you want. But you don't necessarily have to abandon something, especially in digital, if you're just getting started. You just make some adjustments and move on. um, and that's hard to do too. I think sometimes we get caught up in the idea that if we didn't get it right the first time, we need to stop and start over, or we need to basically abandon what we've already done. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's the right idea. Sometimes it's better to just start over with the knowledge that you have, and, take that last event as a learning experience. Um but you don't always have to, especially with digital stuff. You can pick it up and you can paint over it. You can delete your art and start over again on the same canvas if you want, and it ultimately is not a loss. You haven't, fallen short just because you didn't get the perfect version the first time. But yeah, since I don't know, I haven't talked about it in a little while, but all of these things that I've been kind of coloring in are the things that I really want to put up. And I think all I've really accomplished in the last year, feels like sometimes, is getting used to streaming and doing Twitch stuff. Um, it wasn't something I expected. It was the thing that I thought, I can set this up tomorrow. I'm not as worried about the outcomes, so I'm not as scared of it. Um, as some of the other things like writing a book or creating a short film or something of that nature. Like the streaming was something that I felt was a low bar to entry from me. Maybe not for everybody. It's something easy to start, but more difficult to do well. I have talked about that a few times. Streaming is not easy. Showing up to stream is easy. Streaming well and streaming something worth watching is not easy. Um, and some of the challenges were fun, like making this VTuber avatar. I did that myself. I learned the process. Um, the softwares. I created all the artwork myself. I rigged it so that I could track myself. Um, like that was a fun process to learn. And if I hadn't done the streaming, I wouldn't have gotten to do that. Like I wouldn't have gotten to do, dumb stuff, like this, I wouldn't have gotten to make this thing right here, which, tracks by camera. And if I feel like it, I can just spin them around, But if I hadn't done the streaming thing, I would have never learned that craft. I would have never have thought about um like how to build the art so that it can be made into like a puppet. Um, I would never have delved into all the stuff that that comes with that, and I want to do it more now. That's one of my New Year's resolution sort of things, is that I actually want to create another one. I want to create more VTube rigs, that kind of explore different designs and like get some more complexity and squeeze a little bit more out of it. Um, last last year in 2023, I guess I came up with a plan for the stream at one point where I wanted to create these transition scenes and make it a little bit more immersive, so that, when I'm on the stream, you are traveling with me to different, like, physical locations in a made up world, to play games or do art or something like that, and have, stream elements that actually show what I'm doing in the world, like as if it's coming from a projection or it's on a screen. I wanted to kind of make that more immersive, and then I overwhelmed myself by creating a series of hyper complex scenes and starting with the most difficult one until I was so burned out I didn't know if I even wanted to do that anymore. And I've been revisiting that idea a little bit and thinking a bit more about it now because I think it's a fun idea, and I let myself get out of hand with it. And I could have, done that within that time. I could have done that within probably a few weeks, but I kept raising the bar on myself. I kept changing the parameters. I kept looking for more detail. I spent, a couple of times, I spent literal hours detailing areas of the background and drawing that just would not be ever seen by the human eye because there were foreground elements uh, that would have stopped you from seeing it. And that was a learning experience, and I'm hoping I've learned enough to try and take a second crack at it, but not but not overwhelm myself with the scope and accept a degree of simplicity and add complexity later. Because, like all of this stuff I'm doing, nothing stops me from doing it simply the first time, learning a little bit, and then doing it in a more complex way the next time. And the only thing that stops me from, doing that is me. And if I don't learn to simplify things at the outset and create projects that are consistently too big or impossible to execute, then I'm forever going to be in that loop. That sort of I want to do the thing, but it's way too complicated, and therefore I won't be able to, because everything that is on this list in some way, shape, or form is going to be complicated. Learning to, you know, teaching myself to draw again after I hadn't touched it for many years was the first thing on the list, and it's felt very good to get back to artwork and talk about it and think about it and like share those thoughts with people, even, if it's not widespread as of yet. Like that stuff has been incredibly valuable and has made me care about doing art and stuff again. Because for a long time, I just put it to side because I thought that it wasn't important, or that I let a lot of people convince me in some way, shape, or form by their kind of lack of interest in the subject matter. That the things that I thought were interesting were actually not that important, and that I was never going to be able to do anything significant with them, and that that's one of those things that's always going to get you if you're not careful. Especially since I don't think anybody ever said to my face, you know, you can't be a writer, you can't be an artist, you can't make animation or short films or anything like that. I just inferred that that was what they believed based on what exactly? I don't know. I don't know what I based that thought on. to be honest. Maybe it was just their lack of interest. I don't know. Oh, there we go again. Actually, the ad break this time. And ad break over. Okay, man. I'm glad I caught myself before I finished my sentence there. I need like some sort of audio cue that those are about to go off so that I can be more present about what I'm saying or doing at the time. There are ways you can go even further with it, I think. And maybe I'm obsessing too much about pre-roll ads and I should just let some of them play rather than having ad breaks throughout, but I feel like one of the things that like has turned me off to streams in the past is just going to a stream, wanting to see what's going on, and then getting stuck in like between 3 and like sometimes 6 or more minutes of pre-roll ads before I even get to look at the stream to see whether or not it's something I want to watch. And so I'm like very conscious of and like paranoid about that. And Twitch's discovery is rough enough as it is. um, but yeah, I don't know. As far as like yeah, what I was saying before the break, yeah, a lot of preconceptions about what I thought people thought about art. Be the prevailing idea in my head, and if anybody I showed something that I was enthusiastic about, um, did not show a similar level of interest, then I just kind of like let it go, and I thought maybe my idea was dumb or not that interesting, but I wasn't taking into account that maybe the people I was talking to, not the audience for that. And that's why I think it's important to talk to other artists, to talk to other creative people, um, because they are the ones who are going to be like on the same wavelength as you a lot of the time, in regards to like how you feel about something or the effort that goes into it. Like they better understand what it takes to create the thing, than people who just consume, films, television, etc. It's not that they are not important at all. Of course, you're thinking of an audience when you're creating certain things, but if you think too much about what the audience wants, you don't, end up creating something that you want to create or that you need to create. And I think, some really great stuff can be lost just because we're worried about whether or not it will be successful, whether or not it will be, well received, and, failing to take into account that, if people haven't seen something like that before, you have no idea how they're going to react. And that's kind of a good thing, you know? If you go through and you only create what has been successful in the past, you might as well just go back and look at the old thing because you haven't created anything new. Um, and like the other side of that coin is being so obsessed with originality that you don't allow yourself to create something that draws from something that inspired you, because that's what artists and such have been doing the entire time. um, there's not very many artists out there who have magically pulled things that nobody has ever seen before from the ether. It's always a combination of things that they've seen, that they've experienced, and the uniqueness is just in the execution. Um, they're not magic. They're not impossible to reach heights of inspiration, pulled from some unknown, impossible boundary between art and reality. They're just people. They're just people who did. They took the things that they had seen, the things that they felt about it, and they used it to create something. And that's what I've been trying to figure out how to do. Uh, and I've gone back and forth with it a lot. I've changed my mind many times throughout the last year and beyond. Uh, I've backed off of things that I was afraid of doing. I've stuck with a safe thing. I've run out the clock just trying to keep up with streaming and not trying to do anything to make the stream better. Um, there's lots of mistakes that I have made and lots of time that I sometimes feel I have wasted, but ultimately, we're back at what I was saying right near the beginning. If I decide this isn't working out, I either need to do something different and, push forward, or I need to, change tactics altogether and decide to really do something different, like step away from, art and creative things and, just focus on, making a paycheck. But I've done that for a big chunk of my life, and it was not very fulfilling and often led to me being very, unhappy and unwell. And while this is bigger and scarier and riskier to try and do as making a living, whether it be through streaming or all the other things that I want to do that are on this, beautiful thing here that I've got going, like I want to publish some writing, and digital publishing makes that far easier. So it's not so much shopping around for a publisher as writing, just writing, just write the stories. I've got a million of them, and they've all just been waiting for me to, you know, commit them to the page. And I kept backing away from it, thinking, like no one's probably gonna read it. I was like, yeah, no one's gonna read it because you didn't write it, dummy. Um, and I'm not saying you have to be that mean to yourself. I'm just saying that's how mean I end up myself sometimes. It just feels necessary, especially when I repeatedly refuse to learn a lesson that I've been trying to teach and share with others. It feels a bit hypocritical for me to sit here and encourage everyone else to do the thing while I sit on the sidelines on the edge of the pool, like afraid to put real work out there that people might be able to be critical of. As long as I treat it non seriously, it's not a threat to myself or my pride or my sense of self. And like there's an inherent risk in creating art that you know I think discourages a lot of people. But I want to write just because I enjoy writing. I enjoy telling stories. I want to build worlds. So like one of the cool ways to do that is I made a simple role playing game system, and I want to take the world building tools that I made for that and just make some games that people can play if they want. that kind of fit in between all of the other games that are out there that are just like not niche enough. Like some weird stuff. Um, that allows me to kind of like flex my imagination and not try and fit into and compete with well established genres that people have already done well. I don't want to be out there trying to compete with Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. I don't have billions of dollars and massive teams to build that kind of stuff. I just want to make something unique that's a world that I built and that people could play with it and not limit it to the kind of stuff that you see a lot. Like, why not get weirder with it? Why not make stranger stories that push the boundaries of the imagination a little bit? It won't be as successful, it won't be nearly as many people that want to see it, but for a lot of people it might be very entertaining. You never know. uh Artwork, like I said, I've gotten back into creating art. I love the visual arts. Writing is probably the least visual art, but it is very descriptive, and I think it's good at different things. I did an art ramble a little while back about exactly that. I think the VOD is still up somewhere. Um, like what the different mediums are kind of good at, and visual art is very good at giving you impressions of things, um, and kind of being something you can get into a flow state and create and enjoy. It's very relaxing sometimes. Um, if you get out of your own head and just kind of get down to the body of work. Um, and art and writing together, like along with a little bit of composition, um, you can kind of get to comics. You can create a sequence of images with a little bit of dialogue, um, that will convey a story. It's one of the first ways that you can bring those two together and create a visual story. Um, Animatics or animation, um, you just put that into motion. You just add motion. And granted, adding motion is not as simple as it sounds when I say it as a single sentence. Ooh, lots of alliteration in there. Sorry about all the sounds. Um, but, it is building on top of something you already know. Like, if you know how to tell a story, you know how to frame the work so that a sequence of images tells a story. Putting that in motion is just adding another layer, it's adding another skill. Um, and what I've been wanting to do and been thinking a lot about in the holiday season of 2023, as well as struggling with the ideas of and my fears and associations with it, is putting that stuff up, putting that stuff together so that I can put it on YouTube and share it with people. um, which is the entire point. I want to share stuff with people. If I could do it all, um, for free and still have money to live, I would. But this world requires money to live. uh, so like putting it out there to share, like that's one way. Maybe it's in part because I spend a lot of time on YouTube, watching and learning some things, and finding a lot of my entertainment there. That it just makes sense that I would want to be like maybe a part of that big platform, and have it be somewhere that I could share all of that stuff. Same thing going for Twitch to a degree. Um, I don't watch a lot of streams, as nearly as many streams as I should. In part because like sitting down for a lot of streams, like that's many hours you're deciding to dedicate to a single thing, and sometimes it's just a conversational hangout, and that's not what you're looking for. Um, Streams are very mixed and matched for me. Like I have different feelings about them on different days. Um, and it was not my go-to starting point, but like I said, easy to start, difficult to perfect. But publishing things, digital goods are relatively easy to publish. Getting people to buy them, it is a different thing. Marketing is a different thing. Um, but having, that presence out there is something that I knew would always be part of it. Um, Maybe one day if I'm making the big bucks, I can actually, deliberately pay for marketing, but that day is not today. Um, but a lot of these things, the art, the world building, the game design of making role playing games, as well as the writing that goes into it, the artwork that I would want to put in the books, all of those things kind of come around to something, and it's 50-50, um, between two mediums that I would really want to kind of like finish on, or like that I feel like are the culmination of a lot of these different aspects. And that is, the first one is virtual production, which I kind of put here like I literally made the joke a pipe dream company, because virtual production feels intimidating. Making a film with entirely digital art or assets or 3D models and stuff that you have made yourself, or that you have put together and paid for in some cases, because it's not practical to make everything yourself if you're a solo filmmaker. Um, I feel like that one is a stronger draw for me than it used to be. For a long time, I thought the thing that I wanted to do most was make games, but games take writing, art, and game design. They also add animation, they add sound design, they add programming, and they add, like all of these elements together. It's like a movie that you participate in, and therefore it fundamentally changes how a movie works. So it is one of the biggest and scariest monoliths in a lot of ways. And I haven't really known, like, I guess the thing to do ultimately is you start. You just make a small little game and move on. But my problem is usually that I do not have the patience to start small, and then I get overwhelmed, and we end up back at square one having done little or nothing. And there's a bit of an irony in that, I'm sure. Uh, Sorry, just filling in some stuff here while I'm continuing to talk. But ultimately, that's kind of what you have to do. You have to, kind of take that shot in the end. Let me darken this background a little bit. Not that dark. And yeah, ultimately, you got to take your shot. You gotta make some stuff. And the big difficulty, I think, is that a lot of the time, the more important it is that something make money for you, the more you're suddenly thinking about that problem. You're trying to solve the money problem and the sales problem before you solve the problem of creating the thing. And I've definitely gone through my share of that in the last year. Obsessing over like what I think will sell, and then finding that I hate that thing enough to not do it. And ending up as a result with nothing in my pocket and nothing to show for it, because I try and work on something that I don't care about and that I don't think is valuable for the sake of making some cash. And I'm sure eventually, like, I'm gonna have to get past that. There's gonna be stuff that I'm gonna have to be working on that I'm not passionate about, but at the very least I can be doing something that I enjoy, just enjoying the process. And that's been one of the things that I'm trying to learn to do is enjoy the process so that when the product that I am creating, the things that I'm working on, like website design stuff, um, promotional material, things like that that are not as compelling to me, will ultimately be something that I can still complete and enjoy the process of making it, even if I'm not really super interested in working on advertising, on posters or merchandise or something. At the very least, I can put that part of, I can put my distaste for such things aside and just enjoy making some artwork with a specific set of parameters. And I've been getting a little bit better at that, but it's still sometimes you get in your own way a little bit and start obsessing over the wrong detail or something. And I guess that's where the beast of the game design element comes in, is that it's got all this other stuff that you have to learn. And I really want to learn 3D because using stuff like Unreal Engine and Blender to create 3D models and, you know, build out in 3D spaces and film and create things in those spaces. Like, that's the closest I'm probably going to get to working in film, to making my own and not having to worry about, everyone else holding the purse strings. But because it is so daunting, because learning all of the modeling and the engines and the softwares and things like that becomes so daunting, I end up focusing on the fundamentals of art or something else first. But ultimately, like, I know what it is that I want, and I'm trying to figure out how to get myself to do it without struggling so much to, you know enjoy it. And I feel like I've talked a lot about all the things I haven't done. Shows you where my mind's at, I guess. All the things I haven't done in the past year, because in essence that is part of what I want to get into for 2024. Not just continuing to struggle with the same problems, but looking at them closely and acknowledging what it is that's the issue. And a lot of the times it's fear or anxiety about the end result, and not allowing myself to get into the sort of flow state of creating something that I enjoy, so that what comes out the other side is actually good. Because a lot of times art is personal enough that when you don't care about it and you're not interested in it, uh, it shows. It shows in the work. It shows in the render, the detail or the lack of detail. You know, the things that you ultimately put to the canvas feel, a little more lifeless or soulless because you didn't care about the outcome, or you actively were not enjoying the process. And some of that reads. It's hard to describe. Like, you can tell when something is just technically good, but ultimately the artist did not care what it was. There's no little details of points of interest. There's not like a lot of life in the stroke and stuff. So, what is the point of me rambling about all these things today? Well, I guess the first part is me trying not to die is pretty funny at the moment. Uh, Especially when my tablet keeps messing up. Hold on. There's a USB driver problem, and every time my PC restarts, I have to unplug and replug my tablet a million times so that it will stop being jittery. Um, so what does all this mean for 2024? Because this isn't just a retrospective. It's not just me sitting here going, well, all the things I did or did not do in the last year. Because I have done a fair amount. I've progressed more towards my dreams of creating stories and artwork and writing and stuff for everybody to share and be part of than I've ever done before. But it's still, like there's always part of me that feels like it's not enough. That I haven't, if I haven't spent 7,000 hours, doing it and, already met some measure of success, then it's not enough. And I need to, you know, check that because that's the kind of stuff that discourages me from doing more. Um, if I look back and I only appraise the negatives, if I only say, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do this, and this held me back, and et cetera, so on and so forth, and I'm not looking at why or how to make it better, then I'm just complaining to myself about myself. And that ultimately accomplishes nothing. So, what does that mean for 2024? Well, a few things. Um, I took my little break. I had my little hiatus to think about things, and one of one of the first things I we need to work on is just writing and publishing some short stories. I mean, that's just something I need and want to do. Like I've got all these stories. I need to get back into writing so that when I'm storytelling in other ways, that I have that sort of under my belt again. So I've done a lot of art in the last year, but not a lot of writing and storytelling. And that's just one of those little things. I can write some short stories and put out some short story collections or whatever. Um, and that can be a viable potential source of income. Probably not a lot, uh, unless I write something groundbreaking and it gets unexpected attention. Um, there probably won't be rent paying sales in there, but um, it's something. It's one of the pieces, and I always knew with the way the world currently works that unless I got really lucky, I was going to be um, creating a lot of little sources of income from a lot of different places. Another thing that I want to do is I want to get in the habit of designing and putting stuff up on. Hold on. My brain shut down for a moment. Bear with me. I want to put up regular merchandise designs and things. It's one of those small things that I can do. That is a good way to keep the art flowing and not allowing it to kind of taper off sometimes when I am feeling a bit, overwhelmed with things. Like I can always create something new or interesting, to put, on merchandise. And if people want that stuff, they can have it. Um, but if nothing else, it means that I am consistently producing artwork and continuing to refine those things and putting them up where people can see and enjoy them if they so choose. It's not the be all end all. I'm not gonna make my living selling T-shirts probably, but it is something that I can consistently do. That is a design and like business oriented goal. And if I design stuff that I enjoy and that I like, there's bound to be people whose tastes overlap. And that is one of the other goals, is to create stuff that I think will be fun. Okay, last ad break for this stream. It should be done now, hopefully. So where was I? Yes. So yeah, creating merchandise stuff. I'm trying to set a realistic goal for how often I release something like that. Like once every 2 weeks would be reasonable. We're creating a decent design and not just like phoning in a bunch of garbage designs. So like releasing something like that once every, you know, 2 weeks as a deadline for myself, you know, feels reasonable and is a way to like keep me on task. I would like to something that I've thought about a lot and that I would like to do as a weekly thing is like a fan art of the week, where not necessarily sharing stuff that people have done of mine, because I will do that anytime it comes up without hesitation. But um, taking a little bit of time to go out there, find some artwork that I enjoy, whether it's, from a well known franchise, depending on the day, or whether it is something that I've seen on someone's feed and, like as a smaller artist. I would love to do more of the latter than the former, but sometimes, you might not find something on the day and you might have to go looking for an existing, intellectual property to do. But I would like to do that. I would like to, make sure that I vary the type of art that I'm working on in any given week so that I'm not constantly fighting that urge to like shut down. Because that is something that happens sometimes. You do the same kind of art day in and day out, and eventually you want a little something different. And maybe that's not true for everybody. Maybe that's just true for me. But I have definitely found that if I spend too long on something, like an individual piece, I like start burning out, and then I need to, you know, stretch out, do something completely different, so that when I come back, I feel like I'm able to focus on the type of art that I'm working on again, or the type of project I'm working on again, and then I can kind of get back to what it is that I want to finish without feeling like I'm trapped. And feeling like I'm trapped is one of those things that feels like I don't know. Sometimes it feels like a bit of a cop out because I'm not just. What's the word I'm looking for? Because and I lost the train of thought entirely. Yeah. Sometimes you want to work on certain things. Sometimes you want to work on other types of things, and being able to follow that flow a little bit would be helpful for me. It has always been my goal to be a little bit of more jack of all trades and not a master of any one particular medium, and that may or may not work to my detriment, I guess. Because I may not, you know, ever be perfect at any one given thing, but I will say that in addition to that, so I've got I want to make more merch designs. I want to do like a weekly, at least once a week. I want to put out some fan art of something that I enjoy, or an artist or whatever that I like their work, and try and pay proper homage to them, and tip my hat to, whoever I can find, um, that I feel like inspired by, because I feel like that's important to keep that kind of back and forth going, especially when everything is so monetarily driven that it feels like it makes it hard to know when you're supposed to be worried about that stuff. Um, so there's that. Bigger project wise, um, I want to I want to reach a stage where I feel like I can put out something that's animated. It may not be full on animation. It might be more of an animatic to start, but I want to kind of share those as I do them. And so there's still a lot of possibility there. You know, it's not as if I will, you know, not share the work in progress. I want to put stuff up on the Patreon side to show projects that I'm working on, so it's worthwhile if anybody wants to, support me there. Um, I want to make sure that I'm making some sort of improvement to the stream, at least once a week, which might seem ambitious. But depending on the size of the thing that I'm changing or improving or making, it might be a single little piece of artwork. If it's a background or something, it might be making progress on that over a couple weeks. Like there's lots of different work in progress sort of stuff that I can be doing that a lot of the time I just haven't. And I feel like it's beyond time that I should be. Uh, so making some improvements to the stream is definitely something that I feel like is important, because this is where I've spent a lot of my time, and I feel like I hit a plateau uh, midway through the year where I was just kind of coasting and not trying to follow through on some of the stuff that I wanted to do because I was too scared of it. I think I'm done waiting for that to be uh, executed. Like I want to set some goals for myself to do that on a regular basis, so that I'm always thinking a little bit about how to make the stream better or more interesting, to make it more me, and then worry about whether or not people want that a little bit later. Because sometimes your audience finds you, but if you're casting a broad net, excuse me, if you're casting a really broad net, you're going to get a really broad audience, but maybe not the kind of audience that you want, and you're not going to be able to talk about the things that you really want to talk about. You're trying to keep stuff in a safe sort of space for your audience so that you don't lose them, and you ultimately, you might end up, you know forfeiting a more loyal audience or a more interested group of people who actually care about the same things you care about just because you're trying to keep that number big. um you know, make it good and people will, eventually show and share. If you make it bad but are really loud, people will show up but they'll leave. And that's where I'm trying to remind myself that I need to work on making it good so that when people show up, there's something for them to stick around for, you know? I feel like we have some good talks on here sometimes, and especially with some of the conversations and things like that I have with people. Um, when they do have something to ask or talk about in turn, I love those conversations, but you don't get to have as many of those if the chat is blurring by at 6,000 miles an hour, which I don't think I'm ever in any danger probably of reaching that point, but it is definitely something that has crossed my mind on occasion. Is there going to be a point where I can't have that sort of direct interaction, or does the fact that the stream is small kind of limit the things that I can do with it? And I think both are a little bit true. Like if there's a bunch of people in stream, yeah, you can definitely put together different types of activities, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a big stream. Like if I'm trying to do all these other things, like there might be people who appreciate the streams. There might be people who only show up for YouTube stuff, which that's my other one of my many things that I want to do in the coming year is one of the first things I want to make that's like semi animated is I want to start putting out a series on YouTube side that kind of explores the topics that I talk about in art, but like in shorter forms. Not a 2 hour ramble or a 4 hour ramble. I used to do this for 4 hours at a time. I don't know how my throat didn't like completely close up after talking for 4 straight hours sometimes. Um, but yeah, talking about what art is, that's kind of like like the tagline for the series is art is, and then the three dots, leading to some concept or thought or whatever. And it's not about like defining what is and is not art as much as like talking about what art means to people, what it can be, talking more about its potential and its nuance than it is about creating a Merriam-Webster dictionary definition. Um, can't remember the Blender logo is this orange or not. I'm gonna look again. It's kind of a peach sort of color, isn't it? It's a little bit too much. There we go. But yeah, I wanna create that series, and I've been trying to figure out like what is the simple animated format. I want to, at the very most, it would be like this level of art, line art. I don't want to do a lot of rendering, because that would be difficult for the format to be animated, and also something that I can create in a pretty, rapid way in the future. I would love to be able to put out like a video a week or whatever, but I feel like it's got to be at least 2 or 3 weeks for the first couple until I figure all the pieces out. Um, until I've got assets that I can reuse to speed up the process and things like that. Um, but yeah, I want to put out like a little short essay series where we talk about all the little things that art is or isn't to us, and what it can do for us and things like that. And like some stuff that's personal, but also offering up the broader view on the subject matter. Uh, in the longer term, the thing that I kind of have been skirting around for a long time is I think I want to make some short films. I have some like I've got a lot of these shorter stories in my mind, and a lot of them are very visual.
I have an imagination that's driven by a lot of film consumption. I've seen a lot of movies, I've watched a lot of shows. Um, they tend to be one of the things that I find to be most engaging apart from games. And, it is something I can potentially create, however short, uh, within this year. And depending on like how much I drag my feet or how much I allow myself to flounder, which I'm trying to avoid that. And like it might take a little longer to create something like that because it's more meaningful. It's more, you know, dangerous in a way. Like there's a lot more you can do wrong. There's some skill sets in there that I haven't fully tested. I've been learning off and on about animation for many, many years, but not having, put out anything animated. I have no idea like whether or not I have the stamina or patience to fully animate something. So it comes down to, you know, truly testing my desire to create something in that format. But, like I've got some things that I think would be beautiful and like thoughtful and hopefully emotional in many ways. And then I've got other stuff that I think would be, like it would be fun to venture into different genres. Like I love, scary monsters and stuff like that, but I've kept a lot of stuff kind of more safe and positive when it comes to the stream and things like that because I wanted to lay that groundwork. Sometimes people think of, like scary monsters and stuff as profoundly negative and make assumptions based on, like the subject matter of something about the artist, which, is frustrating to me. Much like, metalheads and stuff like that in the music world, a lot of some of the nicest people that I've ever met and the most thoughtful and, creative people I've ever met have been, like on the fringes of what you might consider normal culture. Like some of the nicest people listen to a bunch of metal just because, there's dark subject matter in the songs doesn't necessarily mean that the people themselves are dark. I think it's kind of the opposite sometimes. I think they get out the negativity and stuff in their lives by listening to the music and then they're able to put positivity back into the world as a result. I don't know. I'm sure there's studies that have been done. But yeah, like the assumptions made by people's appearances and their choices and the media that they consume or enjoy can often be pretty dramatic. And I guess I've been playing a bit on the safe side. Like I've still been doing stuff that's inherently me, but on the safer side of me. I haven't been, you know, drawn a lot of, horror stuff or anything like that. Even though I feel like there's a bit of an uncanny, surrealist space that I really want to get into this year. Um, I also didn't want to be like pigeonholing myself, I guess. I want to be able to explore the range and not feel like the only thing that people watch or want to see from me is, a specific type of artwork, you know, specific type of tone, etc. Sorry, I just realized I was using the wrong tool for that. There we go. And all of these things, all of these things, like all of those things project wise are things that I feel like I can do right now. I can make some artwork. I can draw sequential drawings that I feel like can be, given a little bit of motion and at least be animatic grade for an essay or something. Because I feel like, I've got the skills for that. These are not terribly new things. They're adding smaller skills to me, like a little bit of video editing and things like that that I've not done before. Um, but a lot of it would be like within the wheelhouse that I have kind of been comfortable with. Um, some of the stuff that I want to do for Twitch involves, just building out a little bit more, getting to know a little bit more about rigging and making more complex VTube models. I would like to make new or multiple, VTube models. I don't know as I will ever be of the appropriate range or style that people would want me to make models for them. I don't know if I am in the right range for that, but I like the atypical stuff. I'm literally a skull in a underwater drone floating around right now. Um, so like maybe there's a niche in creating atypical VTube models that maybe I could play into at some point. I just have to get enough of them made that people find them interesting to do. Yeah, because there's definitely certain types out there that you see a lot of, but I think there's also a lot of variety that could be added to it as a sort of way of streaming and presenting. Like I was very pleased that I got as much, personality and stuff out of this without it having a face, without having, like a bunch of complex physics or, like humanoid objects and stuff. Like I can still move around. You can kind of, get an idea of what's coming out. But in the background of all of that, uh, as if I wasn't already choosing to take on, as if I wasn't already choosing to take on enough, um, I want to get deeper into 3D. I want to get to know and learn more modeling and start getting into creating some of those things in 3 dimensions, both because 3 dimensional models can potentially be something for the stream, they can be for artwork, they can be used, a Blender 3D model can be used for mocking out scenes that have complex perspective, and then you can draw over them, and you can literally, create your scene in rough blocks in 3 dimensions, and then a lot of the guesswork of drawing in perspective is taken out, and you can move faster and recreate things from multiple angles from the same scene because you've built it. It exists as an object or as a scene. You can now rotate this thing any which way you want to match the scenes that you want to do. And that's actually what they did with stuff like a lot of modern animation is adopting some of that using 3D models so that they can animate and track it all out, and then they paint over it. Or they use projection mapping to project and paint over every scene and stuff. Um, so that's if I learn and bring in 3D modeling a bit more. Hello, King. Coming in towards the wrapping up portion of the stream. Sorry about the timing there, King. Um, but yeah, like if I can get into 3D models and stuff like that, not only could I use those to maybe do like 3D VTube models and stuff for stream, but I could make, potentially 3 dimensional sets. Um, if I learn enough about virtual production and bringing those things into something like Unreal, I could actually have a 3D, you know, Unreal avatar and do something that I've thought about for a long time, which is not just using it for streaming, but if I make different 3 dimensional models that, I can mocap, then I can actually, you know, tell stories or act out scenes and, start making, virtual film sort of stuff in my own style with my own assets, uh, probably with my own voice and stuff to start as well. Like I don't have a huge range of voices and things that I can do, but it's not bad. Um, and I can really start getting into that space more. And I guess the hope is that one day I get far enough into these spaces that I can start collaborating with and paying some people who are better at different aspects of this to work with me on projects and ultimately on games or something. Like I would love to make a game. I would love to make many games with different ideas and settings and things that I have talked about. And I don't know. I feel like I want to make my own little ecosystem of all this stuff that kind of works together. So if you prefer to read a story, you can read the story, but then that same story might also be a comic or, you know, animated into short film format. Or, in the long term, maybe there will be, an RPG you can play in that world or a video game that you can go inhabit a character in that space. And it can all be part of the same thing. And you can reach out to different people who enjoy different aspects and give them a little bit of a taste of like what each of those mediums is good at. And all together, like it creates this kind of rich, hopefully rich tapestry that all builds into the same worlds or things like that. And you can have unique standout projects by all means. It's necessary. But yeah, slowly building up that broader universe would be very entertaining and fulfilling, I hope. And I'm hoping to kickstart a couple of those things. Like set up some things. I've got affiliate now. I've also got Patreon set up. But it's time to start producing things and make that worthwhile. Thank you, King. I don't know. I feel like I'm always giving the caveat that I haven't done it yet, so it's not uh not over till it's over sort of thing. But the dream is there, and I feel like I spent a lot of time avoiding it and running away from different parts of it because it's big and scary, but I feel like it's worthwhile to do, and it would be something that I feel like almost any part of any given day I would be doing something that I love, which is not something that I can say that I've ever had uh, before. I was always doing work or things for for employers and things like that I didn't care about. Um, and the most I cared about was doing it well. The actual work itself did not matter. I just cared about doing stuff well, and I'm hoping I can bring some of that to this, but also get some of the joy back of actually creating stuff. And that's where I'm kind of hoping to tilt this year. I've been working my way up to it and through it for a long time, and I think more and more I've also been realizing that I want to find more ways to share and engage with people and create more, more community around, kind of positively building each other up art wise and kind of helping close ranks a little bit against all the greed and predation and stuff that is all over every industry that is creative right now. Um, I feel like we need to hear the voices of people who are not immediately thinking only about how much money something will make and instead are actually thinking about the art. And I think most of the time you're only going to get that from other artists, from other writers, from other filmmakers and developers. Um, so we need to talk to each other more. And I would love to do more stuff like that. One of these days, I'm going to track down and start, reaching out to other art streamers and stuff like that who seem to be willing to talk about and show their process to see if they want to just like sit down and have a chit chat talk show style. But that's something I've only thought about recently and is a little bit terrifying in the social networking aspect because I know there's a lot of people out there who would, message everybody and their brother and try and climb over their shoulders for more viewership. But that's not really what the point of it would be for me. Like, I just want to talk to other artists who have decided and are confident enough to share that with everybody
like about what that experience has been like for them and like what they think we need and things like that. I like that idea, but I'm not sure who or what to start with, um, and how to do so responsibly. Oh crap! Missed the ad break. Can't tell if it's starting soon or not. I tried to snooze it, but might be too late. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm shooting for this year, and I'll let this break play through since I can't stop it. But I think that's about it for the stream. I really hate when it pauses so long and then starting soon part. There we go. Okay. I almost managed to hit the pause in time, but I missed it by a few seconds. I only needed a couple minutes left to finish talking, but I missed the snooze. uh, I will get used to it eventually. I swear I will. I will master it one day. But that is kind of what I wanted to talk about this night. Like what's happening now, what's happening in the near future, kind of a little bit of a retrospective on, kind of what the year has been like and what I've learned from it and what I hope, will be useful for not just me, but everyone else as well. It's always going to be one of those cases where I want the lessons that I learned to be helpful, not just to me, but to everyone else. And as chaotic as this mess on the screen looks, the fact that I've come back to it after all this time and I still have faith in the mission, so to speak. Sounds like I'm starting a religion, but that's not what it's about. The fact that I can look back at this after all this time and still feel like, yes, this is what I want, um, is a good reminder and a renewal of, you know my confidence in not just the projects but the overall vision of like what I want to do, what I want to contribute, what I want to bring to, you know, art and creative spaces, to streaming and YouTube, or, the written worlds, like as far as putting out um short stories and hopefully one day novels. Like
I want to touch on all these spaces, and I want to like really explore them and like encourage other people to do the same. Like I feel like I can't emphasize enough how important that second part is to me, because a lot of the time it feels like the focus gets put on doing these things and becoming successful. But for me, I think it's more so I want to do these things and I want other people to be encouraged to do the same. Not necessarily to mimic me or because I'm just so wonderful, but because I'm trying to be honest and share the process and show that it is possible, and like talk about the things that I think sometimes we forget to talk about, when we're creating art or anything that we're making. Um, talking about the mental part of it, talking about how to, you know, deal with issues of confidence or doubt, or like how you feel like you're adding or not adding value in a space. Like, we have a lot of tutorials out there on how to draw, but not how to think like someone who draws. Just like I talked about earlier in the stream, I guess, teaching people how to learn as opposed to teaching people how to follow a set of instructions. It's very different. And maybe if I share how I'm learning, it'll be valuable to everybody else as well. Yeah, that's very much the approach I want. I want to share, not teach, because I do not feel like I have a mastery that is equal to teaching. But I don't feel like I'm a bad person to share that. I've spent a lot of time learning to teach people in other capacities, at other jobs, and other situations. So I'm not too bad at that, hopefully. Then again, I might be delusional. You don't know. All right. Well, now that I've talked down to myself at the end of the stream after talking about confidence, I think that's where we're done for tonight. My voice is almost shot, and hopefully you guys go into the new year wanting to take another crack at the thing you haven't tried yet, uh, or something that maybe you didn't quite feel comfortable with doing the first time, and taking a look at where you fell short and learning from it instead of feeling like you failed. Because as long as you keep trying, you haven't failed yet. And hopefully, in the new year, I will be able to listen to my own advice and bring about this myriad of dreams that I want so much to make a reality, and bring as many people with me as I can in the process. I hope everyone has a good night, good week, and that their year is starting out right. And I will see everybody next time. I'll be streaming again, probably a quieter art stream, less talking, more rendering on Wednesday. And on Friday, we do co op gaming and stuff. And if I change my schedule and stuff in the future, there's Discord, there's Twitch schedules, and the site and stuff. Uh, as things come along, I will broadcast in as much as I can on all the channels and social medias and stuff that I can, so that people have an opportunity to check it out. Thanks for hanging out tonight, and we'll see everybody next time. Goodbye. See ya later. Where's the button? Here's the button. All right, now I'm really going. Bye.